Hey, welcome back. So today we're going to dive into a really cool idea. This concept that there's an enormous, totally untapped power just lying dormant in every single neighborhood. Yeah, on your street. It's a power that's kind of scattered right now, but trust me, once you see it, you'll never look at your community the same way again. So let me just start with a simple question. Think about the street you live on right now. Does your block have a budget? Like a collective financial plan that everyone gets to weigh in on? Well, believe it or not, the answer is yes, it absolutely does. Now, it's not written down anywhere and nobody's ever held a meeting about it, but it is 100% real. The whole problem, the reason we don't feel this power, is just that it's invisible. And you can't really do anything with something you can't even see. Okay, so to make it visible, let's just start with a number. Get this. $2.4 million. That is the typical amount of money spent every single year by a single city block with about 100 households. This isn't some new money we have to find. This is economic power that's already flowing through your community right now. All right, so let's unlock this thing. Making all that power visible starts with a tool they call the block budget. And it doesn't create power. That's the key thing. It just reveals what's already there. And it organizes it into three distinct hidden powers. So here are the three. First, you've got buying power. That's the collective spending we were just talking about. Second is influence power, which is all about the political weight of everyone on your block, together. And third, and this one's really interesting, is doing power. That's the combo of all the skills, tools, and time your neighbors have to actually build and create things for themselves. Let's start with buying power, because this can be a real game changer. Research actually shows that money spent at local businesses circulates about 2.6 times more within the community than money spent at a big corporate chain. So by shifting just a tiny fraction of your block's spending, you're not just moving money, you're literally multiplying its impact right where you live. Next up, influence power. Think about this. A single block of, say, 100 households. That's about 150 to 250 voters. Now, in a lot of local elections, the person who wins might only win by a few hundred votes. That means one single coordinated block can represent 15 to 25% of that winning margin. That is a massive political asset that almost no one is tapping into. And finally, we get to doing power, which the source material calls the most transformative of all. This is just the raw capacity to, get stuff done. It's the inventory of everyone's professional skills, the hours people could volunteer, all the power tools sitting unused in garages, and the empty spaces that could become something amazing. And here's the best part. You don't need permission from the government or the market to use this power. You just do it. So, okay, a single block is obviously pretty powerful. But the real transformation, the big power-up moment, happens when blocks start to combine forces. Let's take a look at what happens when we build something called a superblock. A superblock is pretty much what it sounds like. It's a cluster of about 10 city blocks. What this creates is a walkable 5-minute neighborhood of around 1,000 people. And this is where all those individual block budgets can merge into a truly serious force to be reckoned with. Just look at this jump. It's insane. Your single block's $2.4 million in annual spending, that becomes $24 million at the superblock scale. Your 150 voters, they become nearly 1,600, a number that is often larger than the entire winning margin of a local election. And your doing power? It scales up to an estimated $1.2 million a year in productive capacity. This isn't just adding up, it's a massive leap in power. So what does all that scaled-up economic power actually look like in the real world? Well, if a superblock redirects just 5% of its spending locally, that multiplied economic activity is enough to support over 60 full-time paid community jobs. I mean, we're going from an abstract number on a slide to creating actual livelihoods right there in the neighborhood. So, with all this incredible, newly visible power, superblocks can finally start to take action. The framework calls this a third way. It's not some top-down government program, and it's not a for-profit corporate thing. It's a do-it-yourself approach that basically splits into two different pathways. And this gives you two main strategies. On one side, you've got DIY power, using all your collective skills and resources to just build things yourselves. Think community gardens or tool-sharing libraries. On the other side, you've got influence power, using that massive collective voice to demand things you can't build, like, say, better public transit.
Now, the real superpower behind that whole DIY pathway is a mechanism called community credits. And this quote right here really gets to the heart of it. It totally changes the math of what's possible by tapping into what a community already has. So here's how it works. A project is backed by 3 equal parts. Only a third of it needs to be actual cash. The other 2/3, they're made up of pledged labor, people's time and skills, and pledged assets, like tools or the use of a space. This is how you unlock all that doing power we talked about. It makes these really ambitious projects suddenly possible with very little cash up front. Okay, so let's bring this all home. This whole thing is really a journey. It starts with just making the power visible. Then you learn how to use it, and eventually it can lead to a totally self-sustaining community economy. This journey is called the awareness cascade. It all starts with visibility, that shock of seeing the numbers for the first time. That creates a sense of agency, of, hey, wait a minute, we could actually do something. This leads to action, usually a first small project. That gives you real experience, which builds the confidence for expansion, to think bigger and start teaming up with other blocks to form a super block. And that whole journey leads to this fundamental shift in perspective. Once a community really sees itself in the mirror, sees its own collective buying power, its political muscle, its capacity to build, the entire conversation changes. The question isn't, what can they do for us anymore? It becomes, what can we do for ourselves?